wrapping up our conversation about 1Password and Electron and who's responsible. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is sponsored by Upstart, fair and fast personal loans. Go to upstart.com/MacVoices and find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is part 3 in our 3-part conversation about 1Password's move to the Electron platform. This time, we dig a little bit deeper into exactly why the decision was made, whether Apple has failed in some way to deliver the tools that are needed to keep 1Password on the Mac platform, whether venture capital money had anything to do with it, and other factors. Let's go right back and let the panel do the talking. Finish. And so I feel like that's a little bit of the sky is falling kind of thing, Jim, for a lot of the reasons you just pointed out, accessibility, multiple windows, and all that. I find it hard. I would find it hard to replace my Mac with, all my apps on my Mac with Electron apps for a lot of those reasons that you just said. And so, and your point about Apple's failure, Jason Snell referenced that in his article, which was really good, that the Swift version of this is apparently running on iOS right now.
Right.
So it just hasn't been moved over yet.
I think that one problem with that is both. I've seen people suggest they should have used Catalyst because they have a UIKit version of iOS version of it. But the problem with both of those is they won't run on anything earlier than 10.15. And so AgileBIits is saying, we do still have Mojave users and maybe even users that are earlier than that. And, that's one thing that Apple is not very good at, of saying, we're going to introduce new technologies, but we're going to, they're always like, well, but you got to use the latest operating system. And if you don't upgrade to the latest operating system, well, you're dead to us. Well, that's great, Apple, but for, third-party developers, we can't necessarily, be so cavalier about that. And, I couldn't adopt Swift UI at this point because a lot of my customers would be like, oh, well, we're still using older systems. And I'm sure AgileBIits had the same thing. So that was part of their they stated thing was, well, we knew we had to support 10.14, 10.13. I'm not sure how far back they go. And, so even if we could get a Swift UI version working, it won't work for those earlier versions. And so we either have to do an AppKit version or an Electron version. And since we've already got an Electron version on Windows and Linux, well, that's good enough. And I think it probably is. Most users aren't going to care. People don't sit on 1Password that long. People have gotten used to websites. But as far as my sky is falling thing, Chuck, you got to remember that as a developer, your time frame is 5 to 10 years. It takes a long time to develop things. And so you're always, you've got to look at where the puck is going. So no, the sky is not going to fall tomorrow, and the Mac isn't going to disappear. But people are making companies are making development decisions right now about what they're going to develop and what tools they're going to use for the next, multiple years. And so if developers all decide, we're not going to use Apple's tools and Electron's good enough, then in 5 years, the sky might be falling.
Okay, and point. Mark?
Yeah, Chuck, I agree with Jim on this. I think that, hopefully, just given the prominence of 1Password in the Apple community, that Apple should do some serious introspection about this, because their complaints, their complaints are very understandable, and they've got a history of multiple years of Mac OS versions that they want to support, and they want to provide new features. They don't want to cut them off, as early as Apple might indicate through their OS upgrade cycle. And this is a real challenge, right? I mean, we've seen this over before. I mean, remember we saw maybe 20 years ago this with microsystems about Java, and write once, debug everywhere. This first great they said write once, run everywhere, and the reality was write once, debug everywhere. So there's been successive attempts of ability to create software that will run seamlessly across all sorts of different environments. Starting with HTML5, which was basically JavaScript plus CSS, which is sort of an 8 or 10-year-old technology. People have been able to create web-based apps that maybe not have the sophistication of native apps, but they come close enough, depending on how much energy the developer exerts, and they cut across all different platforms. And I think the reality is it's Android, Windows, Mac, and maybe a little bit of Linux out there. And it seems to me that I agree with Jim. Apple has failed to provide them a useful set of tools that they could use. So, I know a variety of Mac and iPhone developers, and they just tell you all sorts of horror stories about some of the arbitrary and capriciousness. I mean, this is the way I characterize it, hearing all their tales of woe, is Apple unreleases stuff and all of a sudden their tool chains break. What is it? Sort of at the core, they renamed all their constants and the old constant names don't work. And, the new stuff, they have to go in and they have thousands of instances in their code. They have to go in and change, so, in that regard, it doesn't seem that Apple has been particularly the best development partner. And to me, the crying shame of this is 1Password is, has long been, sort of a paragon of a good citizen in the Apple community. But because, they accepted, they have a tool that is widely applicable outside of the Mac, and iOS operating systems. And they did accept, outside venture capital that can fuel them in their ability to grow fast. That's the motivation for the Escher, growing spherical, thing in the background is as things change, as they grow, things change. And, I can understand why people want to, bitch and moan and have their feelings hurt, but, I side with Guy. And 1Password is just a tool. That company has to take it, where its owners, its founders, its investors will take it. And if that means, it's sort of, it's minimizing, being a native Mac app. Yes, that's a shameful thing, and a lot of people will be upset about it. But that company needs to do what it needs to do. And they're not, famously, they're not dropping support for Mac. They're just saying, okay, well, instead of this great native thing that you really loved before, we're going to give you a B- version and hope you continue to use it. And I know I'm playing fast and loose here with the facts, but it seems to me the reality is, they're growing in a completely different way. And, their original founders, if they do this right, they can make, tens or hundreds, or many hundreds of millions of dollars beyond their wildest dreams when they started creating, the original 1Password app way back when. And that's our capitalist system. Good on them. I hope they all can buy an island that you can see from the Hubble spaceship. But for the rest of us, we have a choice. STFU, recognize it's not as good as it was and continue to use it, or go to another tool. And I think
likely will be
ultimately
right
that's the end of the discussion.
Same thing.
Other than that, as I say, it's all over except for the shouting.
Mike?
Yeah, I agree with Jim, and I don't think it's anything seditious, but I do think that Apple has kind of painted people in a corner as Mac developers by trying to apply the rules that they had in the iOS App Store with the Mac App Store. You've heard all the stories about apps like BB Edit. I mean, talk about another app that's been around forever on the Mac, not being able to be in the Mac App Store and then famously kind of coming back. But all of the negotiations that had to happen in order for that to exist, like, it shouldn't be that difficult. It should be easy to create things for your platform if it's really important to you. I don't think the Mac is as important to Apple as any of us here maybe would like it to be, but that's just the way things are. I'm thankful for the developers that will put in the extra work to jump through the extra hoops. The most recent example that comes to mind is Audio Hijack with the, was it Monterey, where some security thing basically broke Audio Hijack and they had to rewrite a whole bunch of the app for a simple little function that no one really notices except the people who rely on Audio Hijack. They put in
loopback and fusion.
Right. Right.
Pretty
but
much
it's not,
anything that relied on the audio capture engine, ACE component.
That wasn't Big Sur. You can kind of see that because what happened was Apple made the kernel of the operating system more secure. And, we're all for that, right? But, to do those things that, basically the Audio Hijack, their tools were always kind of going around the operating system to do what they needed to do because it would be nice if the operating system provided the hooks that they needed, but Apple didn't do that. So they went around the operating system. So you're going to get burned when that happens. And I think it's fortunate that they were able to get it to work at all.
Thank God.
I agree. I just think that's going to keep happening more and more and more as Apple's pushing towards kind of this unified platform of Mac and iOS, which is what Electron is trying to do. So yeah, it's the same approach, just from a different angle. You can't get upset, when people are trying to, especially when you consider the funding and this is the obvious best business decision because the PC, Android, all the other, computers that they can get on that aren't Macs, that aren't iOS devices by doing this. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
David?
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, and I forgot about this, back at Microsoft Build back in June, they announced, of course, Windows 11, but they're also going to come up with Teams 2.0, and it's going to be integrated into the OS, which is, I know we don't want to deal with it, but and they're moving away from Electron. So they are going to be embracing Edge WebView 2, which is going to give them tighter integration with Chromium, as well as they're pursuing a lower memory footprint. So, I mean, and I think that's the biggest complaint about what Electron has is its memory issues and of course you said Chrome. I mean, so even though AgileBIits decided to go with Electron, and Electron is still going to probably be around for a long time to come here, it looks like, there's going to be more changes, and Microsoft is moving. And I mean, Microsoft also talked about, keep talking about them, but they're looking at putting Windows into the cloud. I mean, so a lot of things are changing on all the platforms, and this is interesting to me in the fact that Electron, even though 1Password is going to be on that platform, who knows what'll happen in another year or 2 years or 3 years if they see, something else and like this. That I mean, especially if they're more or less not focusing on Mac anymore. They're going to be across all the platforms. This could be something. That they may want to look at.
I think that sounds like fun, because I've said forever that Apple is at its most interesting when it's forced to compete, whether it's on a mobile platform, whether it's on a desktop platform. I really like seeing what Apple does in response to somebody else having a really awesome idea that is popular and useful and helpful and people love it. I love that version of Apple so much more than I love the version that sits around in a conference room and goes, it would be awesome if we just took everything that everyone knows about web browsers and just threw it in a blender. Let's see what happens if we replace Safari with Folger's crystals, and let's find out. I mean, like the part where they have to compete because something is happening, something is useful, something is cool, and it's happening somewhere else, and now Apple has to try and keep up. That's a fun Apple to watch make a move. And so, like, yeah, I am very much looking forward to seeing what comes out of Microsoft like next year at Build. Because I want to see where they end up with the stuff they talked about this year, and what Apple ends up having to do in response.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Upstart, fair and fast personal loans. Go to upstart.com/MacVoices and find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments. 1 minute things seem to be getting back to normal, the next minute it seems like they're going back the other way. One of the best ways to deal with things is to take control of them whenever possible. If your financial life is one of those things that is in turmoil, you need to check out Upstart. Upstart is fair and fast personal loans that can help you consolidate credit card debt, other high-interest debt, and personal expenses. You start that process by visiting upstart.com/MacVoices and doing an online rate check to see what your smart rate is. And don't think it's going to be like all the others, because Upstart is different. They don't just look at your credit score, but at your current employment and income for loans from $1,000 to $50,000. All that in just 5 minutes. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/MacVoices. That's upstart.com/MacVoices. Don't forget to use my URL so they know I sent you. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Again, go to upstart.com/MacVoices right now. Thanks to Upstart for their support of MacVoices. I think, to try to, about time to wrap this up, but I think that Kelly makes a great point. I think Dave makes a great point. I think Mark makes a great point. Nothing changes. It's not like the web or any of our applications are going to end with Electron. There's going to be something else next. There's going to be, changes all over the place. And even Jason's article makes reference to that right now, Swift isn't up to the task. Maybe Swift will be up to the task at some point. We just don't
Swift
know.
UI.
Swift UI, excuse me. Thank you, Jim. Yeah. So, right now that it's a trap, I think, that so much of the tech press and we all also get caught in, that we take a snapshot in time, which is right now, and oh my God, the sky is falling. And, it's 2 weeks from now, another piece of the sky is falling, but this piece over here has been fixed, or it never really did fall. And that's what I think we all have to wait until this 1Password 8 comes out, and then we all make our own decisions as to whether it's something that, we continue to support. I'm optimistic because I think they've done a great job of managing so many transitions. And I think they will do it here because, Kelly, I think you were the one that pointed out, or maybe it was Brittany, that so many of the original people are still there. Just because they took the money and hired new people doesn't mean that the ethos of the company is necessarily any different. It's just that now they have more resources to do more with.
Well, and they pointed it out pretty dispassionately that it was a technical limitation. Like the stuff we want to do, we can't do in Swift UI. So it's not like we can move to modernize it in that particular direction. And like I said at the beginning, apparently it was offensive and demeaning, but people don't like change. People aren't going to like subscriptions, and nobody's making anyone upgrade to version 8. No, this is an early look. They even said, like, this is a preview of what it's going to look like. That's not the final. And just because version 8 is out does not mean that tomorrow version 7 is going to brick. Like, that's not how software works. So that's the part that I think is getting lost in a lot of this, because nobody listened to me an hour and a half ago when I said, go get a paper bag and breathe into it. It's going to be okay.
I might have run Password 6 on an M1 machine recently.
It's happened.
You might have run what? Sorry.
1Password 6.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, in the case of, I feel obligated to point this out. In the case of 1Password, I'd be that much concerned because we are talking about my passwords. And so I want this software over and above just about any of my other software. I want this software as secure as possible. So that's one reason I upgraded right away. That's one reason I went to the subscription model. There's some other places where I've skirted around the edges or found alternatives. But when in this case, man, I want to be paying somebody to be, watching. All my eggs are in one basket. I want somebody with 2 shotguns and an Uzi watching that basket.
Chuck, if I understand correctly, if you're doing the subscription, then all your passwords are in the cloud. They're on their server. Is that right?
Correct. That's my understanding, yes.
So that could mean that, they could have the option at some point to say, yeah, version 7 isn't going to talk to our server anymore. We're shutting that down.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, well,
okay.
So
we
it
should
could
clarify
end.
what the server part means.
Yeah, but on 6 I use iCloud. So
Right. But but Chuck is using their cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Jeff.
Okay, so I'm using 1Password 7. I have a subscription, which means that I'm using the 1Password servers. That doesn't mean that my passwords are exclusively on the 1Password servers. What that means is that all of my passwords are stored locally, and they are synchronized to the 1Password cloud host so that then they can be distributed back out to all of my other devices. And I'm pointing that out, even though I know it's a little bit pedantic, but it's important because there are people out there that will interpret what we're saying and what other people are saying as the only way that I'll be able to use 1Password in the future is if I connect to a cloud server, and that's the only place that my passwords are. And I do not believe that's going to happen with 1Password 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever version is coming down the road, because your passwords that you need to access are going to be more than just in web browsers.
I think we'll give Jeff the last word because we got to get out of here. Guys, thank you. This has been enlightening. I know early on we got a little bit technical, but for those who have that bent, I think it's important to understand. And hopefully we became a little more practical as we went along. And I definitely want to thank the chat room for throwing in their comments. I think it's interesting. I happen to agree a lot with what Webb says, but, and what some of the other folks here say. I'm just going to wait and see. It's working for me now, and if it works for me, then I'll keep going, and if not, then I'll look for an alternative. But right now, I'm not. I know there are some alternatives out there, and maybe that's another show that we can do the pros and cons of some of those alternatives. So let's go around the room, let folks know where they can find you. And as usual, you guys have turned your cameras on and off, so you've been all over the place for me. But we'll start off.
We start Tea Party song.
What? But
I used to work the teacups.
I don't even know what that is.
Disneyland.
You don't spend enough time in Disneyland.
No, well, I'm in Pennsylvania. What do you think?
They have it at Disney World too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's still never mind.
Like things they're bigger.
Jeez. Mike Schmitz, where can folks find you? And thank you for being here and putting up with all this.
Absolutely. It was fun. I have new places you can find me. I now own MikeSchmitz.com, so you can go there.
Cool.
And _ Mike Schmitz on Twitter.
Great. So I keep having to change your lower thirds because you keep upgrading things. That's good. That makes it easier for people to find you. Thanks for being here, Mike. Jeff Gamet, again, good to have you back. Thanks for your wisdom. Where can folks find you?
Okay. Well, first, thanks for having me back on. And I genuinely missed all of you when I wasn't here.
Even me.
Even you and your office manager that you're holding right now.
Yes.
Yes.
He missed you most of all, Scarecrow.
Yeah, that's right. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Jay Gamet, both places. You can find me on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JayGamet, and on lots of podcasts. Most notably, earlier today, I was on Kelly's awesome podcast over at the Mac Observer, Daily Observations.
Listen.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Jim Ray, our resident developer, thank you for all your research and your developer's perspective under the hood.
You can't find me anywhere. I'm going into hiding now.
All he does with the database is keep track of the butter that he's churned. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else.
Well, when you come out of hiding, Jim, which might be in a year or two, where should people try to contact you?
I guess ProView.com. That's a good place. And ProView Jim on Twitter.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim.
And barnraising.com.
Maybe here if Chuck lets me back.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. But next time, maybe you can find Mike in his undisclosed location and you can share the mic or something.
We actually are in the same location right now.
Oh, okay.
Mike doesn't know.
Since
Mike's
Jim
like,
told
what?
you,
Mike
now
has
he
no
has to
idea.
kill you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's coming from within the house, Mike.
It puts the lotion on the skin.
Kelly, Jeff just did a plug for your show. Where else can we find you?
Well, I will point out that on Fridays, the Daily Observations podcast tends to be Security Friday, and we talk about security issues and things. So if the security piece of the 1Password conversation was interesting to you, you can join us on Fridays where we tell you about more of it. You can also find me on my own podcast. I Want My MCU TV, which is over on the Incomparable Network. I also hosted the most recent episode of Football is Life, which is the Ted Lasso podcast over there. I pop up on other stuff sometimes too. You can find me on the After Show with Mike and Kelly, where we recently interviewed Rich Siegel of BB Edit fame, but we talked to him about mixers and parrots instead of text editors. So that was super fun. And you can find me on Twitter as Verso.
Mixers and parrots, Kelly.
Mixers and parrots.
Oh my!
Like the one
Not at the
Rich
same
is
time.
Rich is
Like-
really into mixers, KitchenAids and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
Rich
Oh.
is super into KitchenAid mixers.
Food mixers.
And yes, KitchenAids, specifically like KitchenAid mixers. And also he has 2 parrots, and he entertained us with tales of his parrots.
okay. Well, as long as the
Or
parrots don't
parrot
end up in the
tails.
mixers, then
No,
we're
they're
fine.
completely separate hobbies.
Okay, good. I thought we were going to have the animal cruelty people after us there for a second, Kelly.
No, we just talked to him about parrots and mixers, 2 things he likes.
Okay. David Ginsburg, thank you for your enterprise insight. It's always appreciated because it's a look
Thanks.
into a world that not all of us appreciate. Where can we find you?
You can find me at In Touch with iOS at intouchwithios.com, and Kelly will be on the show this week, so that'll be fun. And you also can find me on my YouTube page, youtube.com/DaveG65, on Twitter, DaveG65, and the Mac Show, and here, and you can find me places. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, David. The Gray Cat. Yeah.
This is Kismet.
Kismet. Kismet, where can we find the guy holding you?
Usually vertshark.com, mymac.com podcast. Oh God, what's the other ones? Guy's Daily Drive, where I drive a car and say silly things, as well as Mac to the Future eventually, and Mac Parrot and Vert Shark over on the Twitters, and Guy at mymac.com. I think that'll about do it.
Great. Kismet does a great job of using you as the ventriloquist dummy.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Years of practice.
Yeah. We know that Kismet is the brains behind the operation.
How hard is that to figure out? But
Mark Fuccio.
you can't see the string back here. But there it is.
Oh, there it is. Good. Mark Fuccio, the man with the spinning background, or I don't know if that's an Electron or what it is, but whatever.
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay. I need to unmute myself. Yeah, that's an interesting print. I'm probably the easiest one to find at Twitter at Mark Fuccio, MarkFuccio, all lowercase, one word. Back to you.
Great. Thanks for being here, Mark. Really appreciate your perspectives. Last but absolutely not least, Brittany Smith. Thank you. You are probably probably not arguably, the newest Mac user in the panel, and I really appreciate you bringing that perspective to this discussion.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be your noob who used to be on Windows. It was actually quite a while ago, but
well,
I got
not compared to some of us. Where can we find you?
On Twitter, I'm ADD Liberator, and also ADD Liberator on YouTube. And since it's been a little while, if you or someone you love has been struggling with pandemic ADHD, we do have a group support that also has a Discord server. It's ADHDguild.com. It's the first time I've had to say it out loud. So,
okay,
yeah.
Great. Well, thanks again. Chat room, thank you again for your contributions. We really appreciate it as always. And we would love to have everyone else join us in the chat room to contribute there as well. Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Join us over on YouTube at MacVoices TV there. And until next time, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.